She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I hope you all had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. The weather here on the East Coast was outstanding. Well, Newsweek reports Putin says Kursk taken back and Russian general admits deploying North Korean troops. Amid the ongoing Russian-Ukraine war, Moscow has claimed its forces have retaken the Kursk region, but Kiev has denied any such gains. Meanwhile, a top Russian military general has admitted for the first time to deploying North Koreans into Ukraine. What does this mean? Well, let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome back to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they take place in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historical context in which most events occur. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they take place, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is negotiations between Russia and Ukraine on a potential peace deal have grown increasingly frayed over the past few weeks. Trump told us he could solve this problem in one day. Well, today's the 99th day, and they still be fighting. My guest is an analyst covering domestic and international politics on radio, TV, and the internet. He hosts the Jamarl Thomas morning show from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday Eastern time on the Jamarl Thomas YouTube channel. He is Jamarl Thomas, my brother. Welcome. Welcome back.
What's happening, my man? How you doing today?
Well, I'm doing well. I'm doing well, and when people ask that and I say I'm doing well, they say, man, amidst all of this, how can you say that? To which I say, look, life is good. This is a problem that must be solved. But hey, I woke up this morning, so the rest of it's up to me. That's how I look at this. Before we get to the latest developments in Ukraine, tomorrow, Tuesday, some people will celebrate. I'm going to say we will just recognize that it's the 100th day of the second term of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it seems like it's been a lot longer than 99. Yeah. Today's the 99th day. Your thoughts, man, on where we are. Are you surprised? Your thoughts on where are we, Jamarl Thomas?
I gotta be honest, this is chaos, right? Surprise. I didn't know what to expect, to be bluntly honest with you. I think from my point of view, I didn't know what to expect. So it's like, if you don't necessarily know what to expect, anything that happens, it's just stuff that happens. By the same token, I would be remiss if I didn't necessarily point out this is out of chaos. Donald Trump hasn't accomplished anything over the course of the 100 days, with a few exceptions. He's been able to deport people who's supposed to be legally in the country. He's created a constitutional crisis with the Supreme Court, a conservative Supreme Court that has effectively told him, bring these people back. And Donald Trump said, I don't know how to do that, despite the fact he's been able to bring other people back from El Salvador. He has sparked a trade war that he can't extricate himself from, and that he is flat fact losing, even according to the conservative Wall Street Journal. China is not going to call him. He's going to be waiting for a train that never comes, as he is like, I don't understand why China doesn't call. China's preparing for this trade war going back to 2018, with last time Donald Trump was in. And they have, let's say, hardened themselves in their resolve that they are going, like, we will fight this to the bitter end. And the people who are going to feel the pinch is us. He is going to create stagflation. Mark my words. I know some people think that Donald Trump is fighting for America. He is not. He's going to give himself massive tax cuts. The notion that you have the world's richest man firing people in the federal government, basically attacking the weakest, even though he's the world's richest man, is pretty astonishing and amazing. I would say some of this stuff is Republican playbook. Yes, but there's a level of grotesqueness associated with it, even beyond the Republican playbook. It is unfinished business with the war in Russia. That trade deal is not, that horse don't hunt, that is a dead letter. And even with Iran, it is unclear whether Donald Trump is maximizing demands in order to provoke a conflict as opposed to solve a conflict. So a lot of unfinished business, chaos all around. That's my take.
When you go back and listen to Steve Bannon, and we've talked about this before, Steve Bannon was very clear. We're going to deconstruct the administrative state. Yeah. You go to that frontline interview he did where he talks about flooding the zone. And I mean, he told us what they were going to do. And now we are in the midst of, a lot of folks never expected this because it's so insane. Nobody thought that Donald Trump would light the match while smoking at the gas station. That seems to be what he is doing. I've been listening to radio, and people are asking the question, are we in a constitutional crisis? Hell yeah. You know, when the executive branch says I'm not listening to the judicial branch and the legislative branch has abdicated their responsibility, yeah, I think we're in a constitutional crisis. Your thoughts?
Agree. Yeah, agree. Like a court tells Trump, I mean, let's be very honest, right? It is radically anti-American to deport people that are supposed to be in the country for foreign government. And you have cult members, and I call them cult members because I call liberals cultists also. So I'll be equal opportunity in my criticism of this. That instead of putting this, notion of ideals of America ahead of their own political ambitions and political aspirations of dear leader, they decide, hey, we applaud him deporting people who's supposed to be in this country, those uppity students. They don't realize that the brain drain that is going to create at these various universities when people decide it is not safe to come to America. I mean, let's be very clear. People would write stuff on social media, and Donald Trump would use algorithms to hunt those people down in order to kick those people out of the country. Or in other cases, people will go to the immigration office in order to ensure that they can stay in the country, and ICE will be there ready to take them out of the country for something that they said in a country with the First Amendment. That is amazing. And even the El Salvador thing is just outrageous. The notion that the courts say that guy's supposed to be here, and you take that guy and said, he's a terrorist. And now that I call him a terrorist, a definition of the state, by the way, something that the state just kind of conjures up, like enhanced interrogation. And now that he is, I can deport him to a country that he doesn't necessarily belong. He was shipping Venezuelans to El Salvador. That is outrageous. The court says, bring him back. And Trump blows it off. The Supreme Court confirms the lower court's order Trump blows it off, and not just blows it off, lies and said, well, 9-0 says, they supported me. They did not. That is a constitutional crisis by definition, right? You are effectively blowing off the court. The court doesn't have a military. The court doesn't have a police force. And so what happens in this situation, this clash of branches? Yeah, it's a constitutional crisis. And to your point, the legislative branch has abdicated all responsibility. Democrats have no political opposition. In fact, it's even worse than that, because the Democrats have decided was hands off, just stay back, let it play out. And it will be so bad that the public will come back to us. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to have any substance. We don't have to change or, have a reality check or come to Jesus moment. We can just be the same worthless trash that we've been for God knows how long. Yeah, it's not a good place for a country to be in, to put it mildly.
And to that point, yesterday, Hakeem Jeffries and Raphael Warnock, Senator Warnock and Senate and House Minority Leader Jeffries, they sat on the steps of the Capitol and they held this rally, and maybe 11 people came.
Yeah.
And first of all, well, one of the issues one of the things that bothers me in all of this is I don't hear the Democratic Party operating as a party challenging Donald Trump and the Republicans. There are just a number of disparate individuals that are out in the stratosphere making varying complaints, but you don't hear the party. And so yesterday, Sunday, Warnock and Hakeem Jeffries are sitting on the steps of the Capitol bemoaning the circumstance, still not offering anything. I know folks are tired of hearing me say this because I'm tired of saying it, but they're not. If Jeffries had said he's trying to deconstruct the Department of Education, here's a piece of legislation here's a bill that we are going to introduce to counter that. They want to destroy Social Security. Here is a bill that we are going to offer, and go down the tariffs are destroying soy farmers in Idaho. Here's a bill. And then have Warnock say, when that bill gets from the House to the Senate, here's what we're going to do. Even though we know it would never get out of the House. Give me something. The analogy I've been using is, if I come home and find Mike Tyson tearing up my living room, Mike's going to find himself in a fight. Now, I know I'm about to get pounded, but Mike's going to find himself in a fight. Help me out, Jamarl.
They don't believe in those things.
Huh?
They don't believe in those things.
Okay.
I'll tell you this way, as an analogy.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
Please tell me.
I'm just saying they don't believe in that stuff. From their point of view, I tell you, when Joe Biden came out, what was their response? Will you shut up? Don't distract from the chaos that Donald Trump is engaging in the economics and everything else. Let it play out. That was their response. You're looking for a legitimate party, not a cult, or at the very least, not a fundraising mechanism for a group of people who are in politics. Those are different things. Like, they are, from their point of view, it goes to this notion why they're fighting so hard, this fight the oligarchy stuff, and then you get liberals attacking AOC and Sanders and everything else, saying this is not the direction of the party. They don't believe in that stuff. That's not what they believe in. From their point of view, they are there to stick their finger in the dam to prevent the water from coming out. or to be the, we are staying here in order to prevent Republicans from getting in office. But that is our job, not legislation, not making movement or moving the ball. That's not what we're here to do. We are paid by the same people that pay those Republicans. And the last thing we need to do is, quote unquote, fight the oligarchy or strengthen Social Security by expanding benefits or increasing the minimum wage. You guys have the wrong party for that. They don't think that way. That's not the way they function. They are token opposition at most. And what they fully believe is the Nancy Pelosi principle, that when people get sick of Republicans, they'll flush back to Democrats. Not because Democrats did anything or represented anything or had any substance.
You've gone. We've lost your audio. And while you're straightening that out, let me throw out another point. And that is, and I've said this before, but well, first of all, I'd be remiss at this moment if I did not correct a failure at the very beginning of the program and wish a happy birthday to Cherie. Cherie, thank you. You are one of our most loyal viewer participants and contributors, and we wish you the happiest of birthdays. And I'm glad, to your point, at least I'm not driving like an old person yet. We're very glad, all of us that walk these streets are very glad that you are not driving like an old person. So Cherie, happy birthday. And if I may be so aggressive to co-opt your birthday and say, folks, if you want to give Cherie a birthday present, contribute to this program. Cherie, I'm co-opting your birthday and using it for my own nefarious deeds. So folks, if you want to show Cherie how much you love her, and we do love Cherie, contribute to this program and let her know how much you love and respect her. With that, Jamarl Thomas rejoins us. You may finish your point, please.
Yeah, I do a 3-hour show and that thing is rock solid, and all of a sudden they come on for and it does. Look, but very basic. If a political party believed in that stuff, they would fight for that stuff. They don't. They fully believe that Republicans will come back. Or the public will come back. That's their belief set. It's the reason why they attacked Joe Biden when Joe Biden came out. It's the reason why they're, going after Bernie Sanders and AOC, saying we shouldn't be fighting the oligarchy. Okay. No, in their minds, Trump will be so bad. Elon Musk is so radioactive. The tariff war would be so detrimental to the American public, which it will be, by the way. The destruction of Social Security will be so bad that the public will come back to Democrats purely to get away from Republicans. And they would use it as a scare tactic later on, saying, you saw what happened to Donald Trump. So we may not do anything. We may not represent anything, but look at how bad they are. That's their plan. So I feel you in saying, in this kind of moral outrage of a political party that is legitimate will be doing different things. Agreed.
And first of all, Douglas Campbell, thank you for that $20 super sticker. See, Cherie, see, folks love you. They're contributing to this show. Thank you, Douglas Campbell, and others of you. If you would follow Douglas's guidance, example, and his light, and contribute as well. Mel W, thank you. See, Douglas, see what you started, my man. Jamarl, so to that point, if you remember back when Mike Johnson told everybody that the protesters at the town hall meetings were paid protesters, and Hakeem Jeffries' statement was, we don't have to pay protesters, the people are with us. And the Democrats are now polling in some of the worst numbers they've had since the 90s.
Yep.
So there's this assumption that people disgruntled with the Republicans will just turn now to the Democrats, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
Mm-mm.
It takes a hell of a lot to get somebody to change party affiliation.
Mm-hmm.
you also have to look at the number of people that did not vote. And so we could see a rise in third party, but I think more probable you will see a decline in participation, not a rise in the numbers of the Democrats.
Agreed. Yeah. They're gutting the numbers. I mean, what, 50% of the public don't vote. And that last election was something like 8 million, some insane number that just decided to stay home. They're not expanding their electorate. They're decreasing the number of people who are in that electorate. I mean, think of the young voters, for example. A really good example would be Gaza. Well, they've associated themselves with that issue, just like young people throughout history, whether it was civil rights, whether it was Vietnam War, etc. And the reaction that they've gotten from the political branch of both sides is condemnation. I mean, hell, I don't know if Democrats would be deporting people, but Joe Biden didn't necessarily take the best glance at what was effectively taking place at the campuses. They're depressing the vote, not expanding the vote. Like, I'm with you. If this was a political contest, you would expect, here's our Project 2025. This is what we want to do. Here's our items that we want to accomplish. And put us in, and this is what we are going to do. Now, that requires trust that I don't necessarily think they have. Who was it? Mike Waltz. When Waltz was on Chris Hayes, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And Waltz said something to the effect of, well, we would have been different on Gaza, without articulating how.
Right.
And he says the words, I know you don't believe that. Yeah, it's that.
Well, and that's when you know someone's lying to you, is when they tell you, I know you think this is a lie, but now you're lying to me.
I know you think I'm not telling you the truth right now.
Maybe let me tell you. No. No. So if it starts with, I know you think I'm lying, or baby, then you know it isn't true. Okay, final point on this. If the Democrats had any semblance of any modicum of clear thinking, they would start the conversation by saying, this is what government is supposed to do for you. And then here's what we are proposing. But that obviously, is not happening. So now, with that, unless you want to comment on that.
I kind of do.
Okay, go ahead.
They don't believe they need to do that because the other side doesn't do it. Like, if you have, it's an equal playing field issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to explain what government is. Why do we need to explain what government is? And if the conversation is just off the table, then nobody needs to talk about it.
And see, like that's a bad assumption, because one of the things that I've learned from broadcasting and from teaching, never assume that when you start using terminology and whatnot, never assume the person you're speaking to, even though they may have heard the terminology, has the same understanding of the terminology that you do. So to your point, level the playing field. When I'm talking about cats, here's what I'm talking about. I don't want to assume that I'm talking about Siamese cats, and you may be thinking I'm talking about panthers.
Oh, I see. I'm saying they don't care.
Well, okay.
I'm being more cynical in this. I'm
Okay.
saying they don't want to have the conversation about government. Because I think your framing of it is, you can create a context where you create an argument. But keep in mind, if you do that, you have to fulfill that.
Right.
That's not an obligation they want to fulfill any more than Republicans do. I'm not of mind that that's what they believe in. I think they just want to win. They just want to win within their own context.
But they want to win within their own context.
Yes.
Because I was just going to, when you said they want to win, I was going to say, well, this is how you do it. But if they want to win within their own context, they're losing. Ask Kamala Harris why she's not in the White House, because they wanted to win within their own context. Ask the American people now about their own context, that's why their poll numbers are below 30%.
Yeah.
So, as my grandmother would say, go ahead on. Go ahead on. Which now has become F around and find out. Okay, so now that we've covered that ground, negotiations between Russia and Ukraine on a potential peace deal have grown frayed over the past few weeks, and now the Kremlin admits that they have deployed North Korean troops into Ukraine. I was wrong on that.
I was wrong.
Okay, you were wrong on that.
Yeah.
And we got to admit when we're wrong.
Yeah.
And I've checked with some others. I've talked to Shloboda. I've talked to Regis. I've talked to a couple of other experts, and these folks are straight up experts, and they all said the same thing. I was wrong. Thomas.
I wasn't just wrong. I was derisive. I was brutal. I was like, this is nonsense. Where are they? Where are they? Oh, yeah. I mean, I put it this way. Sloboda made a really good point. He said, maybe we should have been paying more attention when Russia didn't comment one way or the other, meaning they didn't acknowledge, nor did they deny. The thing is, Ukraine has been the nonsense that they've been coming up with, the Ghost of Kiev, Snake Island, Russia blew up its own pipeline, Russia fighting with shovels. I mean, all of this stuff running out of
the washing machines.
Yeah, right. They're getting parts from washing machines.
Right.
Like when you hear this level of voluminous nonsense, and then they said the North Korean soldiers are fighting, and you're like, okay, dude, okay, where are they? And nobody presents one. And they grab some random Asian-looking guy that,
from Tova.
Yeah. And they say, here's the evidence. And then they would say, they burn their faces just so you can't identify them. It's like, okay, dude, what? Are you serious? This puts me in mind of the David Chappelle line. And I used to even crack on it, like the David Chappelle thing, where David Chappelle said, police didn't want to leave any, like people sprinkle crack on themselves because crackheads didn't want to leave any witnesses. It's like, I'm going to sprinkle crack on myself so there are no questions. That's what put me in mind. We're going to burn my face just so nobody can identify my body. Come to find out, they're there in Kursk. Fulfilling the obligations of the security agreement. And it wasn't that the Russians asked them, they volunteered. They wanted to get battlefield experience. And so highly motivated, very interested in the combat. Yeah. Gerasimov gave them accolades, saying they were, I forget the exact words he was using, but effectively brave, competent fighters in the field.
Obviously, because they're winning.
Yeah.
So what do you say to those who want to make the argument Russia started this, and that two things. Russia started this, and one of the other things that I hear is, what about Crimea? What about Crimea? Russia took Crimea. What do you say to those statements?
For one, Crimea voted to leave to the tune of like 90%. And I don't know if you've seen the recent interviews where the American journalist was wandering through Crimea and everybody they talked to was like, we're Russian, we're Russian, we're Russian. We're fine where we are. The second point is very weird to me because America wouldn't accept the premise that is being presented with the context of this argument is trying to effectively make. You have the US government offer NATO membership in 2008. Now, when Ukraine is supposed to be neutral, you offer NATO membership to Georgia and Ukraine. After you do that, William Burns says a memo called Net means net. Mm-hmm. And William Burns points out that if you continue to offer NATO membership, you're going to create divides in the context of Ukrainian culture that is going to create a civil war that Russia will have to get involved in, whether they want to or not. Effectively saying that they don't really want to be involved in this war, but they're going to have to get involved in this war because it's effectively happening on their border. In 2014, you overthrow the Yanukovych government. You literally, a mob of I think I would say neo-Nazis, but Mark would say Banderites, Banderas,
neo-Nazis,
Banderites, fascists, whichever one you want to use.
Right.
And the U.S. admits, even in New York Times, that CIA was all ensconced in Ukraine as this was being egged on by the U.S. I mean, USAID, National Endowment for Democracy, all of these groups were effectively egging this on. You get Victoria Nuland in a phone call with, I believe, Jeffrey Pyatt, where they literally break down who was going to be in the government after they overthrew the government. Say, let's midwife this thing and F the EU in the context of the conversation. They overthrow the government. They call it a revolution of dignity. It was literally a coup. Literally a coup. You get the areas in the east that are mostly Russian, ethnic Russian Ukrainians, that in no part want to be part of NATO. And Lord knows they don't want a fascist government that overthrew the legitimate government that they were a part of. And they said, we don't want to be part of this government. Crimea decides to leave. Lugansk, Donetsk, those areas decide to leave. And you get Ukraine bombing and killing people in those areas, up to 14,000.
Wasn't the Odessa massacre? Isn't that what it was called?
That's another one. Yeah, that's another one, right? And so one of my guests, who was part of the Maidan coup, points out that the U.S. was directing the firing on Donetsk and the Donbass region. And so we are ensconced in this all the way through it. And we have taken this kind of weird stab in the back myth for something that we ourselves would tolerate. The notion that if Mexico was overthrown by, let's say, China, and they put in these people who are like, we're going to take back New Mexico, and we hate Americans, and they're pulling intel services into the government in order to make inroads into America. And we build up a massive military in Mexico. The notion that we would say Mexico is its own country, Mexico could do whatever it wants, Mexico is an independent actor, we would invade Mexico so fast, it would make your head spin. And the argument against Putin is not so much that he invaded. The argument is he took too long to do so.
You mean from the Russian side
point of view?
And from the folks in the Donetsk.
Look at the Cuban Missile Crisis, for example.
Right.
The United States was willing to end the world for its own integrity. They ended up in a civil war that Russia ends up getting involved in. There's a difference between those things.
I'm glad you mentioned the Cuban Missile Crisis, because people need to understand that, as with Ukraine, Gorbachev sends the missiles to Cuba. Khrushchev sends the missiles to Cuba in response to American missiles in Turkey. It wasn't that Khrushchev just woke up and said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send a whole bunch of missiles over to Castro because it's his birthday and I know Castro loves missiles. That's not why that happened. The United States put missiles pointing at the Soviet Union into Turkey, and Khrushchev said they tried to negotiate the deal and the United States was stubborn. And so so that's a piece of this that folks need to always understand when they talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis.
By the way, I'm an American, and my context is shaped by what we will do.
Right.
It's not like I'm taking a context out of, Timbuktu. I come from this country. I remember that stuff, right? And so it's like when a man on the moon sitting at events, looking at events, trying to be fair, this is what we did. And we're now doing this on their border with a hostile military organization that is expanding in order to create this Hobbes choice of either you let Ukraine be part of NATO, a hostile military organization on the border of Russia, something that they knew was a red line going all the way back to the fall of the Soviet Union, or you go in order to prevent. Those are your only two options. Neither of those options are good, by the way. They went in. They went in for the from their point of view, it was existential.
Yes.
And I think they're right that it was, and it is existential, which is the reason why Putin has like an 80% approval rating. So, people can make this argument of, oh, the Russians did it. We wouldn't tolerate it. If Donald Trump, back in 2020, decided, I'm staying in office, Republicans back him, staying in office. California says, we're out. We didn't vote for that. America has fundamentally fallen. This is no longer America. This is something else. We're out. And Trump starts bombing California. And California raises the military in order to fight back. You're getting something similar to that. The difference is there's a big brother on the other side back in California that is willing to push back on what they're effectively doing, especially considering America had ensconced itself in Ukraine at that point. So, no, this notion that Russia started it, if you didn't overthrow it in 2014, if you adhere to the Minsk 1 and 2 agreements, something that Angela Merkel, Hollande effectively said, we didn't, we just made this, we didn't care, we lied, and we gave Ukraine time to build the largest military in Europe on the Russian border, that it was about to invade the Donbass region and kill ethnic Russian Ukrainians. It is less complicated, but more complicated than they make it. They go with the stab it and back myth. Russia just wanted to take over all of Europe with 150,000 troops. That's all they wanted to do. All of Europe. They're going to be running through Britain and sitting on the throne. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. No, for my take, they didn't start this war. If you didn't overthrow the government, none of this happens. If you didn't expand NATO to their border, none of this happens. If you fulfill the Minsk agreements, none of this happens. If you allow the Istanbul agreements, none of this happens. When Putin was standing out there like a preacher, begging people to come to Jesus, and they were like, you don't get security guarantees. No, we're not going to talk to you. We're not going to even mention your deal. Okay, fair enough. I have to take my respect at the barrel of a gun. And he did.
Again, happy birthday to Cherie, and folks, to show her how much we truly appreciate her on the date of her birth. Instead of sending her a gift, because we don't know where she is, you can send the gift here as in a contribution to the show. And Cherie will gladly accept your recognition of her birthday by supporting this program, as she is a viewer every day. So Jamarl, in further evidence, and thank you, Dr. Nick, because these are tariff-free contributions. There are no tariffs because it is a gift on the birth of Cherie. It's Donald Trump has said there's an exemption, a tariff exemption, if you make the contribution today, because today is Cherie's birthday. Then no tariffs will be applied. Thank you, Dr. Nick, for reminding me of that. And Jamarl, a broken clock is right twice a day. And Lil Marco came out and told us this is a proxy war.
Yeah.
And he was right. And when I say that to people now, they say, oh, well, Marco Rubio. I know the guy's a clown. I got that. But he's right.
Yeah.
Proxy war. And Jamarl, I bring this up a lot of times, and a lot of people don't remember this. I want to say it was the April before, that would be probably April of 2021, I think. No. When did this thing start? This thing started February.
Yeah. 21.
Huh?
22nd. Yeah.
Okay. It started in February 21. So the April of 20. Do you see Meminem? Thank you for that super sticker. Cherie, happy birthday. Sent 100,000 troops to the Ukraine border.
Right.
You remember that?
Yes. And the U.S. ignored it.
A lot of people don't remember. Before this whole thing jumped off, I want to say it was April of 2020, the Ukraine sent 100,000 troops to the Russian border. And Putin called Biden and said, Joe, you better back that thing up. This is not going to end well. He said, my response will be disproportionate. And what was the other word he used? It'll come to me in a second. Mm-hmm. And Joe Biden got rattled and called Zelensky, and Zelensky pulled those troops back. This because this is a proxy war. The United States was trying to bait Russia into a military response so that Joe Biden would then be able to claim the justification. You see, now we got to go in and respond. Asymmetrical. Thank you, James. Putin said, my response will be asymmetrical and disproportionate. James, thank you. And for providing me with that, you should make a contribution to the show since it's Cherie's birthday. So you remember, a lot of people don't remember, and it's hard to find articles to that now.
Yeah.
But those are the dots that folks forget to connect when they try to understand how this, and that's what resulted in Biden and Putin meeting in Geneva, Switzerland.
I was there.
When Putin gave Biden, here are my security demands in writing, and I expect a response from you in writing, and the response never came.
It promptly ignored. By the way, I was there for that, covering it for the station.
I remember, yeah.
At the time, I was hopeful. I was naive when I was there. And my boss was kind of like, yeah, we'll see. He didn't care at all, right? They sounded very similar when they were there giving their speeches. For the first 5 minutes, Joe Biden kind of, this fire and brimstone and everything else. But then eventually he started sounding more like Putin. I guess they were trying to match their messages. But by the time they went back to Washington, nothing. Joe Biden blew it off like nothing happened.
So now we have, and James, thank you for that $5 super sticker. Happy birthday, Cherie. Yeah, I'm gonna wear this out today. Y'all can just rest assured of that one. I'm gonna wear this out. Zha Yun, you just joined us. You need to know today's Cherie's birthday. And all the chatter you do on this show, you need to pay up and send Cherie a birthday present. David, thank you. And Zhao Yun, you of all people, you need to make a big contribution and say happy birthday, Cherie. Because now we're hearing from all of these so-called analysts and talking heads, Putin keeps changing the terms of the agreement.
No, he hasn't.
Right? And everything I'm reading and everything I'm hearing, nothing has changed. They are steadfast in their position, which is we're not falling for the banana in the tailpipe trick again. We're not going through Minsk 1, Minsk 2. Now you want to take us to Minsk 3. We've already gone to Istanbul. We've already done all of this. So what does Sergei Lavrov say? He says, well, we can talk about a peace deal if you want to, but you got to settle this thing now. You have to settle it. We are not going to have temporary nothing. You can have a ceasefire, but you got to settle it. That's Trump, what I hear them saying now.
They've been consistent. They haven't budged. Their airlines have been pretty much the same going back for like a year or so. The only thing that changes is the more territory they take, at some point they're going to say, hey, Sumi, let's make a referendum. Would you like to join the Russian Federation? And when they say yes, they say, all right, we're going to put this in our constitution that they're now part of the Russian Federation, in which case you're going to have 5 places that they now have to effectively fight over. No, their red lines have been the same. Denazification, no NATO for Ukraine, no troops from Europe in Ukraine. There's that. All of these things are red lines. They've been consistent. They haven't changed anything. The regions that they've effectively taken or that voted to leave, because that's what they did, they voted to leave. Those regions are now part of the Russian Federation and will remain so. In any deal that takes place, the Ukrainian military has to effectively leave those regions. Those are their terms. Now, you can say no to that, and they keep going. Ukrainian military will collapse at some point. They will keep going. Every word out of my mouth is a dead Ukrainian. And I know that hurts some people's feelings. It's a war. Hundreds of thousands of people are, like 600, 700,000 dead Ukrainians, maybe 100,000, 200,000 dead Russians. It's a war. They've been killing and dying for the last 3 years. And based on their own constitution, They have to keep going to get those regions. And I don't know if people have thought about this yet, but I remember like when this first started, and I kept saying, how does it stop? How do you stop this? Like, it's one thing to get into a war, right? It's another thing to extricate yourself from it.
It's easy to start a war. It's hard to end it.
It's hard to end it. And from their point of view, they have to keep going and keep going. If it takes another year, if it takes another 2 years, they have to keep going. And if you get to the situation where Ukrainian military collapses and you get this unconditional surrender, even with that, Europe is going to be putting in guerrilla fighters, or they're going to be fighting these guerrilla wars in the West that already are, let's be honest, hate Russians because they have a history of this kind of neo-Nazism in the West. No, it's a mess. And let's be honest, Trump's deal is ridiculous. I mean, I was looking at this deal and I couldn't tell if Trump made this deal with the notion that it would fail.
Hang on. One point before you go there, because you're taking me to my neck to where I wanted to go next. One of the great disconnects that I see here is that Trump thinks he's negotiating a peace deal when in fact it's surrender.
Right.
And he doesn't understand that
the loser doesn't dictate terms.
The loser doesn't dictate terms. And yes, the fighting continues, but the war is already over. Dude, you lost. You just continue to, like when we were kids and the big kid on the block was sitting on your chest, poking you in the chest, telling you to stop. And, once you stop fighting back, I'll stop poking you in the chest. Until you continue to struggle, I'll continue to poke you in the chest. And so Putin's just saying, hey, I done asked you guys too many times. Let this go. It's over. So that's why I always say they need to fire up the USS Missouri and sail that rascal into the Black Sea, resurrect Emperor Hirohito, because this is surrender, folks.
There's a difference.
Hirohito knows about surrender. Go ahead.
There's a difference. Like, there's a big difference. Like,
so you were saying that their terms, that Trump's terms are just crazy. Go ahead.
They're insane. I mean, just real quick, there's a difference between. It's one thing if the U.S. military is fighting a war. Let's say if you're in Afghanistan and you get the point, say, okay, we're pulling our troops out. We're leaving. We're calling it a day. Or if you're in Vietnam, you say, all right, we're done. We're calling it a day. We did our fighting. They don't care about Ukraine.
Right.
They don't care. Like, they will fight to the last dead Ukrainian. They don't care. They're not Americans. They're not Brits. They're not the French. They're not any of these groups. I mean, what did some of the people in America say? I mean, this is a great bargain. We put in money. They put in their lives. This is a deal, right? That's the way.
They're not European, but by European standards.
Exactly.
They're not Europeans.
Right. They don't count. They don't care. And so they're okay with them losing their lives. Think of the way, honestly, the way Zelensky fought this war. A lot of it was a propaganda exercise. I mean, for God's sake, they did a promo video about an offensive. Did you see that video? Hmm? It's a big Ukrainian guy. He's like, I would tell you, it's a great video. I would watch that movie. It's that good. That offensive didn't go well. That guy's probably dead somewhere.
Wasn't that Arnold Schwarzenegger in that thing?
It looked like it. It was this huge hulking Ukrainian guy with this big beard.
Right.
And he was like barking orders. And he's like, we want to defend Ukraine. It's like, all right. That is the first time I've ever seen somebody telegraph that they are going to do an offensive. And it went nowhere. And they got crushed. And you know what was even worse than offensive? Curse. Right. They lost more people, materials, they lost more material and curse than apparently they did in an offensive. It was a promo ad, for God's sake. They were fighting not for themselves per se, but in order to ensure that money from the West keeps coming in so they can show, hey, look at what we're doing. We're doing stuff while missing out on battlefield realities. Not to mention, you find out that the United States was directing much of what was taking place on the battlefield, according to the New York Times. They lay dollar short, something that we have been saying early on. And by the way, that Le Figaro had said early on that Americans were in the battlefield. So they don't care about Ukraine in the way that they may care about their own troops. There's a difference. That's the only point I wanted to make. This peace deal is nonsense.
Well, just other quick point.
Mhm.
I was looking for the book. Have you noticed that Malcolm Nance has been conspicuously absent in the chatter and the narrative? Where have you seen him?
I have not seen him.
You haven't seen him because I know you were tracking him for.
Not since he had
you were on Malcolm Nance
upside down or something. For a while. Well, he had like the thing upside down or something, like on the at the far end near Poland, saying like, "Yes, I want to defend Ukraine." Okay, dude. Okay. Look like somebody's granddad.
Of a guy that was in battle. He had the cleanest uniform I've ever seen.
Yes, he did.
So Cherie asked the question. Yes, folks, it is her birthday. Why did Sweden join NATO? What happened?
That is a good question.
I think it's a great question.
There could be pressure from other countries.
I think so.
Sweden could be slightly freaked out by Russia. Like I could never tell whether they're lying or projecting, if that makes sense. Like I can never tell when I look at the things that these guys are saying, whether or not they're being serious, whether they're seriously freaked out, or whether or not they're using it purely in order to, settle these kind of ancient conflicts that they typically go into. Cherie, that is a difficult question for me to answer. I can't answer that question.
Kevin Baptiste made a $10 contribution. Happy birthday, Cherie. Thank you, Kevin. See, Kevin gets it. Kevin's from Oakland. Kevin gets it. Being from Oakland helps. And Zhao Yun, you still ain't put nothing up yet, but and you got to say happy birthday to Cherie, and you got to do it with some money, Zhao Yun. Here's on the Sweden question. Haven't we been seeing in Sweden and some of those other I'm forgot a blank on that region.
Like Finland, Sweden, Nordic countries.
Right, thank you. A shift to the right in their politics. So I think Sweden joining NATO, one of the elements to that, contributing to that, is we're seeing a rightward shift in their politics, because they had been neutral since World War II. So it's not simply a matter of joining NATO. That's demonstrating a real dramatic shift in their political alliance, their political stance. And I think pressure from the United States played greatly in that move.
But see, that's the thing, though. The rightward shift, like the ADF,
in Germany,
woman in France, in Germany, Alternative for Deutschland, National Rally, Le Pen's party in France, many other parties, the right-wing parties in Austria, they don't want to be involved. In fact, if you notice, Carlin Gorgescu in Romania, they canceled the election on his case. They tried to put Le Pen in jail, effectively saying, "Oh, well, you can't run in 2027." Meaning the rightward shift has been people who, they say kooky stuff, but they also say, why are we doing this? Why are we putting money into this? Why are we fighting these wars? Why can't we use Russian energy? Our businesses are being deindustrialized. Like, it's like, hey, these Muslims are eating our schnitzel. They'll say that. And just spend 10 minutes on schnitzel.
Right.
But then they would also say, why can't we use Russian oil? Why can't we use Russian gas? Why are we deindustrializing ourselves like this? And if you're the German public, you might say, I don't like the guy slightly being racist, but at the very least, he gets my economics. Like, the rightward shift has been more in line with this notion of being against the wars. I mean, look at here. Donald Trump was the one who came in and it's like, I want peace. On some level, they're aping what he's doing. And if you look at France, when I was covering the European parliamentary elections, you had right-wing parties. If you notice, the left-wing parties like the Greens were tossed out on a rail. And you got a rightward shift in the European Union. It's just so happened they still elected van der Leyen, despite the fact that the constituent had changed significantly in a particular direction. If you look at France, you get the Macron's Renaissance Party brutally loses, with National Rally, Le Pen's party, taking like the first spot. Macron freaks out, calls for a snap election, and loses the snap election. And what they ended up doing was working together in order to ensure that the National Rally didn't take the first spot, in which case you got this kind of motley crew of left-wing parties. And then you got Macron coming in, knowing that the government was effectively broken, still putting his guy in on top of all of it to run the government. Like, I don't know. I mean, I suspect there was more pressure from the U.S. wanting to say, hey, we've expanded the network now that the Russians have gone into Ukraine, using political pressure in order to do it. I can't believe that the public, well, I don't know. The European public is weird to me. But the rightward shift had more to do with these guys being skeptical of what was going on.
I'm laughing at your statement. The Muslims eating our schnitzel.
Well,
since
they were.
Schnitzel, one of the ingredients of schnitzel is pork. I just find that's funny.
My ex-girlfriend told me that. She said that because she was like, these people are idiots. And she said he spent 10 minutes on a speech saying the Muslims are taking our schnitzel away. But as I pointed out, because they won, right? The right-wing party in the country won. Right. But as I pointed out to her, well, why do you think you won? It wasn't because of that. Like, that wasn't that speech.
So when you look at not only are the Ukrainians out of arms, they're also out of people. The average age of the Ukrainian soldier is around 48 years old. They've had the press gangs that have been roving the countryside, just snatching up people, and they released prisoners from Ukrainian prisons and sent them to the front line. So young folks have fled the country. What does this? I mean, pretty soon they're going to be sending out people with, in wheelchairs and walkers. What does this say to you? Why won't they just stop fighting? Why? Because it's a proxy war. So Donald Trump could say, when Donald Trump met with Zelensky in the Vatican, he could have said, well, Volodymyr, it's over. Why? What's the game here? Why don't they just stop?
That's the question.
I say they can't stop because the United States, this goes back to the point I made about surrender. They can't stop this because the United States cannot admit defeat. So they're trying to negotiate a way of saving face.
Yeah.
And Putin saying, no, man. So, okay, going back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. They kept the U.S. missiles in Turkey a secret so that it would appear as though Russia backed down,
right? The
United States prevailed, and we can walk around now, USA, 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 we kicked the bear. And Putin saying, no, man, we ain't doing this again.
Yeah, we ain't doing that.
I told you, and this takes us back to our fathers. Boy, I told you not to do that. You went and did it. Now you got to answer to me.
Yeah.
And that was an answer you never wanted to.
Yeah.
You didn't want to have that conversation with my father. And he did everything in his power to prevent you from having that conversation. But when that conversation had to be held, it was held.
Yeah, I agree with you on this. It looks bad if you just surrender. And what does the media start screaming? Oh my God.
Especially a fight you started.
Yeah, but they don't want to own the fact that they started.
In a fight you started.
They have myths surrounding the beginning of this war that they just don't want to count in real terms. No, I agree with you. Because that's the question with some of my guys. Why don't they just stop? And by the way, Zelensky doesn't want to stop. And if he stops, there may be a bullet waiting for him. If he does.
If he stops, the Banderites are going to shoot him.
Yeah, exactly. Even if he makes a deal, Banderites are going to shoot him.
Banderites are going to shoot him.
He has internalized this role as an actor.
Lucky if the Banderites just shoot him.
Yeah, he may need to skip to Paris or somewhere, take his money and go.
Kevin Baptiste Optics Doc, you're right. Dr. Nick, get the switch. Putin has the switch. That's the point. And he's whooping that ass.
Yeah.
And
Problem is, how do you stop? That's the catch,
you,
right? Like if they keep going. I mean, Mark was saying that they can go for like another year without US backing. If Trump says I'm done, they could still keep puttering along, just losing people being killed, getting weaker and weaker and weaker month after month after month. A pointless endeavor.
what about, and I was talking to Mark, and he meant, and can you give me a couple more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mark made the point that this is now turned into a drone war. And I had not really thought about it in that context. But Mark said, yes, artillery still flies, but this now has become more of a drone war than anything. Your thoughts?
Flying killer robots. Flying killer robots. That's where we are.
Yeah.
Isn't that terrifying?
It is.
Like, I mean, it's rational in a way where it's like, okay, we're going to build robots to go fight for us. And the robots get more sophisticated as they go fight for you, keeping human beings out of, ideally, the conflict up until the point where you blow up all the robots and then people can go back and fight it again. It's weird. It's very strange when you think about the dynamics of that. Like, because you can imagine countries building these drones, I don't know if you've seen Black Mirror, where they built these robot dogs and the robot dogs had a screw loose in programming and just start killing everybody. Like it wasn't specific who it was killing. And Russia had this thing that looked like a robot dog running into a house and blowing the house up. And it's like, oh my God, like this is where we are in regards to our warfare. They have, I can't say perfected. They've initiated what is modern war in the same way that the French had to learn, hey, you can't charge horses into artillery. That's bad. Our war doctrine needs to change. Yeah. And so that's what you're getting, this kind of new warfare. I don't think, though, that you could fight this war with just drones. I'm highly skeptical of that. I mean, they're losing too many people for it to just be fought with drones. And Russia, each side keeps making more countermeasures. So ability to knock those things out of the sky, nets around certain locations, creating drones that can't be intercepted using some kind of wire system that unspools as the drone flies, where you can't necessarily use radar to knock it out. They have been developing modern warfare in terrifying ways, 1 year at a time.
I remember a brilliant speech that Minister Farrakhan gave, and I personally believe it was the best speech of his I've ever heard. Mm-hmm. It was at the National Press Club, and then he went and gave the say. This was right before the United States went into Iraq, and he was begging George Bush not to go into Iraq. And he gave the speech at the National Press Club. Then he went over to the Howard Inn and gave the same speech to the black press at the Howard Inn. And he said, I listened to this speech at least once a week. It was, to me, just brilliant. He says, and what brought this up to me was you're talking about the technology. He said, you can't win this with your technology. He's speaking to George Bush. And he says, you can't win this with your technology. He says, yeah, the first 2 weeks, yeah, you got it. He says, but eventually you got to bring your people in here.
Right.
And when you bring your people in here, they got something for you.
That's exactly what happened.
And that's what I'm saying. It was just, I believe it was Minister Farrakhan's finest moment in terms of public speaking.
I got to check that out.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And but then, because he also said to George Bush, and I think this really applies to Donald Trump. He said, your blindness, your arrogance is blinding you to the realities that are right before your very eyes. He said, because you don't see with your eyes, you see with a combination of your heart and your mind. And your arrogance is blinding you to the, he says, just like a Nebuchadnezzar, just like Hitler. He said, just like all of these other sick leaders that think they're gods beside God. He said, it ain't gonna work for you this time. It's a brilliant speech. But you're mentioning the technology just brought that speech to mind. Let me shift gears because I know you're giving me more time and I want to get this other point in. We've heard this for a very long time, but it's now rearing its ugly head again, and that is starvation in occupied Palestine, which we now know as Gaza. That there are Israeli leaders on record now saying that they are morally, the story now today is they've got maybe 1 or 2 more days of food left in Gaza as the victims of the genocide are starving. And you now have Russian leaders saying that they are morally obligated to starve the Palestinians.
Sociopaths, fascists, hateful sociopaths. And in their mind, this is okay. And from their point of view, nobody has intervened. Like, shaking a fist is not the same thing as intervening. They've been able to get away with this for over, a year and a half, where they've massacred scores of people using the excuse human shields, despite the fact that they use human shields literally in literal terms. They have an open air ghetto where they effectively blow stuff up at a whim. They would tell people go to a safe zone and then blow up tents in the safe zone. And so there is nowhere that is effectively safe. And they've decided, all right, so we are now going to starve people until we get our hostages back. The reality of it is Hamas has been trying to give them those hostages back for like a year. They have agreed to one deal after the next that Israel, because it knows it has effectively whip hand in this situation and the backing of the U.S., which continues to give it weapons, money, political support, political cover in the UN Security Council, just like Joe Biden did, that they can do whatever they want. And so there is no restraint. It's like if you had a kid that you realize you have no rules for that child, and then you go into a store and the kid goes bananas, and other people are like, what is wrong with this child? What's wrong with the child is the child has no restraint. You've shown it that it can do whatever it wants. If I want to murder a child, I can murder a child. If I want to shoot somebody in the back of the head, I can shoot somebody in the back of the head. If I want to do it with a drone, I can do it with a drone. Nobody is going to do it. You've watched me do this day in and day out, day in and day out. And so they've gotten to the point of, hell, you've watched them rape people on video. If you remember the gang rape on the video, with the majority of the population saying fair game. That is Israel. And so now they've decided, all right, not only were we starving people before, we're definitely going to do it now. And on top of starving them, we'll admit it. So what? What are you going to do about it? We're going to do this until we get our hostages back. We're perfectly okay doing it. They vocally admitted to doing it. They vocally talked about doing it. You got Mike Huckabee defending the starvation campaign that they're effectively going with.
Oh, you mean the great Christian Mike Huckabee?
Yes. Yes, who believe Jesus is going to return.
A wonderful believer in Jesus. That Mike Huckabee?
That same Mike Huckabee.
Oh.
Same lunatic. That whack job.
So, okay, because I know that one of your avocations is biblical scholarship. How many people did Jesus feed the masses with loaves and fishes, or did he starve the masses?
I am not necessarily a Christian scholar, but I've been to Sunday school. Feed the masses.
Man, I went to Sunday school on Monday. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Feed the masses with fish
and with loaves and right. He fed. Jesus fed people.
Yeah.
He didn't starve
Jesus
people.
Got it wrong. Huckabee said Jesus got it wrong.
Okay.
These people are lunatics.
You know what? He was reading that Bible that what Donald Trump was holding upside down. That's
maybe it's that way. Yeah, maybe he read it backwards and he didn't quite get the thing. No, they're starving people in mass. 2.1 million people, and they feel perfectly fine in doing so.
And they're bombing children's. And this is no fake news story that we were hearing about, Russia bombing women's hospitals. No, because we're seeing this on video. They're
Right.
bombing children's hospitals. They're murdering women. And it's not that they don't have the food, because the food is sitting on the border of Egypt. They won't allow the food into Gaza, because not only is it a matter of the hostages, they also believe that this is the way to bring Hamas to its knees. They've been very clear on that point as well. The way for us to defeat Hamas is starve the Palestinians.
Hamas has tried to give everything at this point. Like, Hamas got to the point and said, okay, fair enough, we won't be part of the government. You can have the hostages back. Hamas has been trying to give anything. It's not about Hamas. It's about taking land. Meaning they want either to exterminate or kick them out, one or the other. And from their point of view, we want this territory, we want this land. Hamas is just a convenient excuse to do it. They don't care about the hostages. They don't. I know people think they do. They do not care about the hostages. If that was the case, they could have them back by now.
No, this, like so many other of the issues, is just a political talking point, and they're using the hostages to their advantage when it is politically expedient for them to do so. When it then becomes, then they just say, my brother Jamarl Thomas, man, thank you so much for your time today. I greatly appreciate it. And as always, man, be safe, and we look forward to having you back.
Oh, thank you. Always appreciate it. Thanks, you, brother.
All right.
You have a good one. Be safe,
All
okay?
Right. Thank you. Same to you. I got one more question here, folks. Let me see if I can get through this. Given this escalating global backlash, is Israel isolating itself on the world stage? The answer to that is yes. They are already isolated on the world stage. They lost the anti-Semitism argument a long time ago, and they lost the Hamas is the enemy and evil. They lost with the explosion of technology and our ability now to go to Instagram and go to all of these other social media sites and to see real time, to go to Electronic Intifada, for me to be able to bring Laith Maroof on this show and have him in the field talking about as missiles are going by. The Zionists have lost the argument, which is why they've become so desperate as to try to use anti-Semitism in the United States as a bludgeon or a cudgel against the First Amendment. Because yes, they have isolated themselves on the world stage. Next part of the question: how sustainable is this position, and could continued actions in Gaza lead to a broader geopolitical consequence for Israel? The answer to that question is, how sustainable is it? That kind of depends on how you define sustainable, because at some point it will no longer be sustainable. I will say to you, in the near future, for the next, it is sustainable for the next few months, but I don't know how it goes much beyond that. Could continued actions in Gaza lead to broader geopolitical consequences? The answer to that is absolutely, positively yes. And that's why I say people are making the mistake. They are confusing restraint with fear. Iran is not afraid, but they are trying their best to exercise restraint because they know if they don't, that everybody suffers, and they're trying their best not to bring that suffering on the region. Ansar Allah, they are in the mix, and so they're you whether it's Hezbollah, and everybody now talks about with the fall of Syria, that the fall of Syria was the cue to Hezbollah and the cue to Iran that the party's over. No, I think you're lulling yourself into a false sense of security if you believe that. Folks better hope and pray and pray and hope that Iran doesn't get to the point to where they say enough, because they have been, you can't always analyze these things through the eyes of the United States. You can't always view these things through the eyes of what would America do, because they have an entirely different approach. They're operating, their controlling mindset is a defensive mindset, not an offensive mindset. The United States is operating from the offensive position. Israel is operating from the offensive position. Iran's defense strategy is a defensive position. Lebanon's position is a defensive position. Where does Ansar Allah fall on this? I'm not sure whether they're offensive or defensive, because right now they're kicking butt in the Red Sea. But quickly, let me see if I can say this quickly and get out. Yeah, I know we haven't heard anything, Zhao Yun. You haven't heard anything from Iran or Hezbollah since the last year. That doesn't mean that they're done. See, thank you for making that point, because this is the point. That statement says to me, Zhao Yun, that you're looking at this from the Western concept of time. They have a different concept of time. They have been around, their culture has been in existence for over 3,000 years. The United States hasn't even reached 300 yet. And these folks have been around for 3,000 years. They invented the wheel. They invented the aqueduct system. They invented cataract surgery. I mean, they have a different concept of time. They think of time in generational construct. There you go again. Who's the military superpower? Man, Zhao Yun, stop it. That's idiocy. And I know I'm not supposed to be contrarian to my guests, but see, that's the blind Western imperialist mindset. When Joe Biden sent the USS Eisenhower battle group into the Red Sea, what happened? What happened? Vladimir Putin called him and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "What are you doing? You can't scare these people. These people don't scare." He said, "We can sink your aircraft carrier from the Black Sea with Kinjal missiles." What did Ansar Allah do in the Red Sea? They ran the U.S. carrier group out of the Red Sea. So again, Zhao Yun, all due respect, and I mean this seriously, that's the Western imperialist mindset, which is a losing, failing mindset. If the United States was and is the military superpower that you are projecting in your mind, why are they still fighting? Why didn't this end a year ago? Why haven't they been able to solve this problem with military? Why did the Saudis come to the negotiating table with Ansar Allah after almost 2 years of fighting that Obama started? Why did the Saudis come to the negotiating table against Ansar Allah only to have Joe Biden tell the Saudis, do not reach a peace agreement with these people? Why? If the United States is so big, so bad, so strong, and the military superpower, blah, 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 why was Ansar Allah able to bring the Saudis to a standstill? If the United States is so big and so bad, why are they still fighting in Gaza? Why wasn't the IDF able to go in and in a week, like they thought they would, go in a week, kick butt, take names, and bring the thing to an end? Because the definition of victory for a opposition, for a resistance force, is different than it is for a oppressive force. That's why people who know what's going on will tell you Israel's losing this thing. If they weren't, it would have been over a year ago. So all of that to say, if you're viewing this through the prism of Western ideology, Western rhetoric, you're looking through the wrong prism. Look at Ukraine. The United States thought, oh, we'll go ahead and poke the bear, and we'll be. What did Joe Biden tell you? We're going to turn the ruble into rubble. Didn't happen. It's that American arrogance, as the minister said, that is blinding everybody to the realities that are right before their very eyes. I heard somebody say one day in a bar, and this wasn't the first time it was said, but in the moment it was incredibly profound, as a fight was getting ready to break out in a bar. And I heard the guy say, look, bruh, don't think because I haven't kicked your ass that I can't kick your ass. Be grateful that I'm patient. And he turned back on his bar stool and took a hit of his bourbon. And that was the end of that conversation. So, hey, you can't fight a guerrilla army with a conventional army. You're right. That's why, folks, I strongly suggest you read the book People's Army, People's War by General Giap. The blueprint to a guerrilla counterinsurgency. General Giap, People's Army, People's War. Y'all need to read that book. With that being said, again, Cherie, happy birthday. Truly, I appreciate you. Thank you always for your support. Thank you for allowing me to use your birthday as a fundraiser for myself. I greatly, greatly appreciate that. Hey, folks, all of you all that are watching on other applications, please subscribe to the YouTube page. Greatly, greatly appreciate that. We're here for you, but we can't do this without you. And we desperately, desperately need your help here. Tomorrow, we got a great show tomorrow. Give me 1 second now, because I'm trying to remember. Erica Keynes is going to join us tomorrow. And she's another one who from Hood Communist. She's going to join us tomorrow. Got a great show. Got a great week, actually, coming together for y'all. So stay tuned. New episode tomorrow. Erica Keynes is going to join us. Please follow, subscribe, leave a review. And this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all tomorrow. Until then, enjoy the remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.